Everybody, it's Lee Foster here of Revitalise, connecting people and Revitalise meets. Welcome to the business focused podcast that is Revitalise Meets. It gives me the great pleasure to be welcoming along powerful connections from not just locally but globally to really delve into their background and really find out about them and a bit more about their business, or most importantly as well, about their role that they offer. And for me, this week, we're doing a bit of a special edition, and it's a great opportunity to bring along a long-standing charity that's been one of my nominated charities since I started Revitalise back in 2017/2018. They've been part of my offering. They've been part of my support structure. I've done many miles with my legs, hopefully, not on my hands. And I've done many things with running and walking, etc., to try and raise great funds, but also raise great awareness of what they do. This week, with a special edition Revitalise Meets, I've got the great pleasure to be welcoming along a trustee to the Glasgow Care Foundation, but also on the marketing committee, the one and only Mr. Mr. George Clark from the Glasgow Care Foundation. George, how are you today?
I'm well. How'd I follow that? Thanks very much, Lee, for the intro.
You're more than welcome. It's great to actually get you online and actually have a conversation with you, because I've met you many times at the locals around Scotland. Your reputation precedes you and what you do with the Glasgow Care Foundation, etc. as well. But it'd be great to learn a bit more about, what Glasgow Care means to you and where it is at the moment and the business journey so far with the charity. How would you share us on that one for us, please, George?
Okay, so I've been a trustee for a couple of years now, and I was invited to join through a networking group, which shows the power of networking groups, that they see talent, they give opportunity, they bring people together. And what attracted me to the Glasgow Care Foundation was its strapline of being a small charity that does big things. And when you delve into, so what is that big thing? For 150 years, the Glasgow Care Foundation has been working towards trying to alleviate poverty in Glasgow. Doesn't get any easier, let me tell you that. It's still a huge issue. Now, when people talk about Glasgow, they sometimes think of what Glasgow looks like today, but our core market is still that, what you could call hardcore Glasgow, where poverty has been endemic for, if not centuries, then certainly a long time. We've had past patrons or involvement from the Prince of Wales in the war years to our current patron is the Lord Provost of Glasgow, and our current chairman is Alistair Dorward. All of our trustees have a basis and grounding in Glasgow. I chair the marketing committee, but we've also got a care committee and we've also got a finance committee. But it's the fact that there is such a demand, there is so many heartbreaking stories, and there is an opportunity to make a contribution to a city and a community that I care about, which is what really attracted me to use some of my grey hair, cuts and bruises from the corporate world to try and make a difference within the charity sector.
So did you know about the Glasgow Care Foundation before, or the GCF, before you actually got involved with the networking group? And did you know anything about them beforehand?
I knew nothing about them. I'd never heard anything about them, which is, I think, one of the challenges for small charities. How, the networking of business groups that everybody talks about, if people don't know you exist, they can't come and buy, or they can't come and have a conversation. And I think that's true for the charity sector. If everybody knows about Maggie's, everybody knows about the British Heart Foundation, but there are so many small charities that work in local communities. It's a very, very hard space So I knew nothing about the Glasgow Care Foundation. So in joining the marketing committee, I think one of our missions is to have a story that's worth telling and
Yeah.
a story that is compelling for people to say, I need to know more. I
Yeah.
want to give more. And that's what we've been working hard to do for the past 18, 24 months.
Mm. I think it's what's interesting to me is that my first ever impression of networking was actually meeting one of the contacts through the Glasgow Care Foundation. They
Yeah.
were part of my story at the beginning. We mentioned Elaine or Elaine Sargent.
Yeah.
And she was a phenomenal ambassador when I met her on my networking journey around Glasgow, and really shone the light about what the Glasgow Care Foundation was all about. I think one of the first events I ever went to was the toy collection. Used to collect the toys at Christmas time to
Yeah.
give out. I thought that was phenomenal, absolutely brilliant.
And that's one, again, that's another challenge for charities because I used to work in risk and compliance.
Yeah.
So sometimes risk and compliance gets in the way of trying to do good things. It's very hard for charities now to take goods, toys for redistribution because of health and safety, because of fire regulations. So a lot of it now is very cash focused, which is a challenge in its own. But I'd like to ask you, you mentioned the word ambassador,
Yeah.
and you we're having this conversation because you're a very, very good ambassador
Thank you.
for the Glasgow Care Foundation. Um, you give us great support, you give us free access to community. You asked me if I'd heard the Glasgow Care Foundation before I joined it.
Mm.
What was it that made you want to be such a great supporter for the Glasgow Care Foundation?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question, really, George, because I mean, like I said, that my first ever impressions was meeting Elaine at one of the early networks that I went to, and that was down by the Village Hotel at the time, down at Govan Hotel, Govan, and getting to really know how Glasgow Care worked through the connections in there really made it pulled the heartstrings. It was a local source charity. There's loads of charities out there, George, and I totally respect that, understand it, and see how it all works. As you can tell by the accent, I'm not a local from Glasgow, right? So, the Geordie accent maybe gives it away ever so
Yeah,
slightly. But for me, to support the families, to support children, to give them that helping hand up in a time that is really difficult for them, that makes a big difference. We all know ourselves through childhoods that we have and where we're coming from. The certain memories that you have of back then that really has an impactful, lasting impression with you as you get old, and where that comes from. And some of the direction that comes from that is actually the help that you give them in the early stages.
yeah,
Now, I never heard of Glasgow Care Foundation before I started doing that, but then seeing the work that you were doing, going into the office in Govan at the time and seeing some of the work, seeing the bags of new toys at the time that you could do, the white goods that were getting dropped off.
yeah.
And then also being in there near Christmas time and seeing some of the shopping vouchers given to the families, seeing some of the kids' faces, seeing some of the families that were given a bag full of toys for Christmas for their kids that they couldn't afford to buy them Christmas presents. Wow. That's what really give me that sort of insight to become an ambassador through the Glasgow Care Foundation. And that's why I'll endeavor to try and do what I can in giving visibility, to give exposure in the right way to how the Glasgow Care Foundation really helps people from a local source. And you know what it is, George, as well? I think it's testament to yourselves and people that are part of the chair, the committee, the way you've all been driven, focused on what you want to achieve. But to go for 150 years, that's testament to any charity be going for that length of time.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's sad that we still have to exist. And you use the word impact. And I think for small charities, what we have to do is focus on where is it we can make the impact, because the size of the demand is so big, then you're right, we have to focus, which is one reason why we work in selected postcodes. You talked about white goods. When it comes to poverty, there's only so much you can do. So you have to focus where you want to put that effort. So we don't look at things like fuel poverty. There's other agencies help with that, including all the utility companies. An example of a couple of things we might do would be, sadly, a single mother passed away and left 3 young children. And Gran had to take the kids, but Gran didn't live in a huge place. It was a small 2-bedroom flat. So we were approached through the social worker, because we only work through agencies. We don't work direct with the public. So care workers, social workers, housing associations, professional bodies like that would approach us. So they approached us and we gave Gran a single bed and 2 bunk beds so that the kids could have somewhere to sleep. Another example might be somebody who's come out of a women's refuge and has been given a social housing. In the old days, the local authority would give a starter pack. Sadly, they don't do that anymore. So what they're given is effectively a shell. So we might look at flooring, we might look at white goods, we might look at bedding, somewhere where it gets them up and running. And as you also said, we sometimes give supermarket vouchers. Because we believe in giving people the dignity of choice. So we let them choose the kind of carpet. All of this is brand new stuff from suppliers that work with us and give us really good discounts, great service. But the supermarket vouchers also give people that dignity of choice, that when they go to Asda or whatever, it's up to them how they spend the money. And we rely on them. Now, we also work with schools. So another example would be during the pandemic, we gave either laptops or tablets so that the kids that couldn't afford it or couldn't access it could still do schooling. So we try and target specific areas of need that people can get past that first piece of how do I get my feet back up and doing something. Might even just give somebody a white van to move from one place to another if it's really that kind of need. So it's about being targeted and focused and prioritising. But you're right, it's not hard to come across heartbreaking stories.
Do you know, one of the things then, it's so true what you mentioned there, George, is that it's unforeseen circumstances that you don't expect to happen.
Correct. You and I could end up in poverty just because of circumstances.
Correct.
Look at the number of military people that are somehow ended up as homeless on the street. We're all just away from needing help.
And we all go through struggles in life, and when you're just starting to get set up or getting organized, or the unforeseen circumstances that happened to that Gran before with the children, and they need the bedding, they need the space, they need that type of thing. And it's great that you've got a close-knit community and cause that is local to the town that can actually help you with that as well. Because I mean, there's a lot of support we can give to many other charities, but to unforeseen circumstances when it happens that way, and especially just even a meal, a meal for a family on an evening, or a meal for through the week, providing a week's worth of food and shopping for them to survive, and give them nutrition and help. Really helps.
I mean, that's a good point. And when I said you and I could end up in poverty, there is a big debate round about poverty. And relevant poverty versus absolute poverty. Clearly, we are focused on absolute poverty. And one of the things we've worked quite hard on in the 18-24 months, given what's been happening with cost of living crisis and everything else, It's to look to those other charities where, no, that's not what we do, but you do. So how can we make introductions? How can they make introductions to us so that a coherent whole has a bigger impact than we all work in silos?
Yeah.
And although there is real competition in the charity sector, because we're all chasing a diminishing pound that people can spend, we still all recognise we all have the same purpose. We want to make a difference to people's lives because it's not their fault. They are where they are. And if we can introduce somebody that we don't do this, but you'll get a hot meal from them, or you'll get some baby clothes from them, or you'll get, then we all do that together within Glasgow. And it's humbling, the amount of volunteer effort and the amount of goodwill that people have to try and make a difference.
Yeah. And how, out of the ambassadors, the people who are promoting or supporting or giving you exposure, how many ambassadors in total are they now with the Glasgow Care Foundation? Likes of myself, and how many people are going out and spreading the word?
That's another thing within the last 18, 24 months, and we're still working on it, is the ambassador program. We've had some really good ambassadors, and I think just now we've got about 20 signed up. But some are more active than others, and we're not as active in support as we could be. So what we hope to do over the next 6 to 8 months, because the ambassador piece is a partnership. So it's about like the networking piece, right? If I can do something for you, you can do something for me.
Correct.
So what we're trying to find is, how do we give something to our ambassadors that justifies why they would give something to us? We have a compelling story about, well, just look who's behind us, all the poverty that we're trying to fix. But we're asking people's time, and there has to be a purpose, a benefit in giving that time. So we're still working on refreshing our ambassador program that makes it more a two-way street. How can we use our networks to introduce opportunities? How can we give you time and space to tell your story on our platforms and to our audiences, and see if there's a win-win for the ambassadors and for us in creating it. So there's more to come in that space.
How have you found adapting to it? I mean, I ask this question to a lot of my business interviews who come along and chat to me on Revitalise Meets on the podcast. But, you know, we've come out of a lockdown. I guess that was quite hard for Glasgow Care Foundation. You know, I hate to talk about that area, but it was a blimp in our schedules that we didn't expect to be happening. But it took just over 2 years to come out the other side of it. What was the cause and effect to the Glasgow Care Foundation? How did you come out of it and adapt to the environments better?
I think one of the challenges we have is size, but it's also one of the benefits, because we're a very flat, skinny operation. We only have 4 staff, and we only have 4 staff now. Well, actually, no, take that back. Somebody's on maternity leave, so forgive me. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 staff. Right? They are all part-time. So coming out or going into lockdown, all we had to do was work from home. We could still phone up suppliers. We could still deal with social workers. The one thing we changed, we got rid of our office, and realizing that we didn't need it, because we're very focused clearly as a charity on cost. Now, we cover our costs from an investment pool, having operated for 150 years. There's money in the bank that pays for how we operate. So anytime somebody gives us £1, all of that pound goes out the door.
Right, okay. Brilliant.
So it stopped us doing the face-to-face stuff. It stopped us. We used to sometimes do home visits. But you know what? If we're working through professional partners,
Mm.
and we trust and build up relationships with those personal partners, we can be there for the conversation with
Yeah.
the individual in terms of, is it a carpet or is it a hard flooring?
Mm.
Is it a blue curtain or is it a white curtain? And as far as possible, we try and give them that dignity of choice.
Mm.
But everybody's used to doing that online now. So for us, the hardest challenge, I think, has been trying to refresh our resource model to match the new world
Yeah.
where people are more comfortable with online,
Mm-hmm.
but getting your foot in the door for corporates and other people has become harder. So the fundraising challenge has become harder. And that's why we've increased the resources in that fundraising piece of the operation.
Brilliant. It's great to hear, because I think a lot of people forget about that, what came through the other side, and how, you know, that exposure makes it even better for people to get out there and use it, but then also embrace the two powers of in person and virtually as well. And it's also interesting and great to hear that that pound comes in, it goes straight back out again. You know, it's giving back straight away. But I think there'll be a lot of people out there who'll be really surprised that there's 4 members of staff within the Glasgow Care Foundation. You know, you'd look, there's a lot more people, but yeah, we have a lot of volunteers and a lot of people on the committee and who give their time and their knowledge to raise the profile of GCF.
We have a very good board of trustees with a real depth and breadth of knowledge of finance, of the care sector, of marketing. And we refresh that on a regular basis. But the fact that we deal in cash rather than donations does mean we're working on a new program just now. We recently split the fundraising into high value, low volume. By that I mean we're looking at trusts, we're looking at wills, we're looking at potential big ticket stuff. Whereas we've now recruited for the low value, high volume, and we're working with some of the universities, particularly during Freshers Week,
Yeah.
try and find a volunteer pool that helps the university and corporates meet their ESG programs, giving back to society and communities, and giving students the opportunity to make a contribution and to learn what it's like working with an organisation, a charity. So it's another example of a win-win, and gives us free resources that we can start to do more than we're currently doing to try and increase the depth and breadth of our fundraising pool.
We talk about fundraising as well, or fundraising, get my words out properly there. But going forward in the next sort of 6 months, the tail end of this year, what is your plans with GCF or the Glasgow Care Foundation? Is there anything that's coming up in the schedule that you've planned in for the next 6 months or so onwards?
We'll certainly become more active in that trust space. We've also applied for a number of awards. We've been lucky over the last couple of years winning business awards from like organisations like Scottish Women in Business, Glasgow Chamber of Commerce. And I had an email just before we joined where we've just been given another award. And often that comes with a cash benefit, which is why we seek them out. So we're very focused on trying to improve our presence in that area. We're also focused on getting back into the corporates, because we kind of walked away a little bit from that during the COVID piece. Getting that volunteer program from the universities up and running, and potentially again from corporates, and also looking at events. We're speaking to some of the Glasgow venues where we could maybe do some joint ventures. And all of that is about working in the community in which we operate to
Yeah.
allow people who also live there to contribute to their own community. So that over the next 6 months, I would add to that the ambassador program refresh that we talked about. But given the skin of resource we've got, I think what we've been focused on the last 18 months has been definition, trying to define what is it we're trying to say and who is it we want to say it to.
Yeah.
Trying to focus more on relationships rather than transactions, so that there is a longevity to the income streams and the community that we rely on, and also to have a strong, compelling story that matches our values, purpose, brand, and outcomes, so that when we talk to people, we are authentic.
Yeah.
If we say this is what we're going to do and what we stand for, that's what we are. So over the next 6 months, the focus is on getting momentum into that, and then taking that to the community to say, come and help. Here's the call to action.
Yeah.
Come and join us, because look what we can achieve if we try and work together.
I love that. I love the collaboration. I love the relationship building, the focus on that, not transactional, but actionable with the relationships you're trying to build, nurture for the long term, longevity of the Glasgow Care Foundation. And if people were watching today, I mean, by all means, if anyone's watching and listening to us today on either the LinkedIn Live or on YouTube, please feel free to drop a question in for George while we come to the tail end of today's interview. But you can always drop some comments into the comment areas. You can give some testimonial there if you wish to. You can drop it into the YouTube channel. Please feel free to drop something in there if you're watching with us just now. If for who's watching and listening right now, George, if they wanted to get involved in the ambassador program, what would be the best course of action for them to do to getting involved?
Just reach out. Go to the Glasgow Care Foundation website, www.glasgowcarefoundation.org. I think it's org. I'm terrible at these things, sorry. I chair the marketing committee. I should know off by heart. But that gives you your points of contact, which would be either Elaine Sargent or Rebecca Young. They are the two people that work in our fundraising activity, and Rebecca will be responsible for the ambassador program going forward.
So Rebecca is going to be part of that. Rebecca Young, did he say?
Yes.
So I'm just going to drop that into the. I knew I always get this wrong anyway, so I'm going to drop that into the chat area for Elaine Sargent about the ambassador program. And if you see that in the comments, please feel free to get in touch with George, with Elaine, with Rebecca, and they'll be on hand to help you with that one. It's on the YouTube, so I've dropped that little comment into there for us as well.
Thanks very much. But the ambassadors, it's people who have a network and have a bit like, I mean, if it could cut and paste you, Lee, I would cut and paste you. That.
I don't know if you'll want to do that, George, by the way, but they can certainly try to, by the way.
One Lee Foster is enough for anybody. but it's people who have a passion for life and care about the people round about them, and have a network that they can make introductions for. Because when we look at who do we want to speak to, there's a list, right? Because it depends. We want to speak to corporates who are looking for a charity of the year. McRae Financial Services chose us as their charity, one of their charities of the year last year. That was enormous for us. We go well over £10,000. I think I can't remember the exact number, but I know even in the first few weeks we get 3,000 just from them using QR codes within their organizations. So companies, firms, small businesses who are looking for a charity of the year, come to us. Right? Lawyers, accountants, financial planners, people who are speaking to funeral directors, people who are speaking to people at key decision points in their life when they might have some assets and they might want to, either for tax purposes or for other good altruistic reasons, have the ability to distribute some cash to the charity sector. And people who just want to give us a donation.
Yeah.
There's the main people we want to speak to are those finance guys that support customers making decisions, trusts and corporates. That would be a good start. And the business community that could become ambassadors or use their network to put us in touch with the diaspora and people who care about Glasgow.
Yeah. I've actually just dropped that into the YouTube channel, especially in the comment box as well. I've just put in there, GCF are looking for corporate supporters.
Yeah.
Who do you know? You know, if you know somebody, great introductions to George are legal companies, accountancy firms, IFAs in the local area of Glasgow. That's just a tip of the iceberg of who we can support you with as well. And it's actually quite nice. I'm just noticed I'll give a shout out where shout out's due as well. Ambika has joined us as well on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for making a comment there, Ambika. And she just said they're incredible to hear all the work the Glasgow Care Foundation do. And I think it's a great insight, you know, to listen into this conversation this afternoon, myself and George, to really learn. We've talked about exposure and getting the message out there as well. And I think you answered one of my last questions as well. It was actually going to be, who was a great business introduction for you, George? And who can we introduce to you? And I think we've just put that in there.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to try and have a picture in your mind who you want to speak to. That's one of the things over the next 6 months we need to get more focused on, improving that who is the avatar we want to speak to, when, why, and for what purpose. But I've given a flavour of who and why, I hope. And if anybody that's looking at this knows somebody, then just reach out. We'd be delighted to speak to them or to you.
But also as well, it's not just the corporate supporter. It's individuals out there who want to do something for a run, a walk, a charity exercise, or something. They want to do a charity raise of some sort, a tea morning, a coffee morning. You know, are you happy to get people involved in that as well?
Absolutely. And that's a really good point, Lee, because you're going to do hopefully a sponsored role.
Yes, well, you've just put me in the position now to go
for it. It's official.
It will be.
It's official now. But small things matter.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's a coffee morning, whether it's a sponsored walk, whether it's, I don't know, a sponsored knitting, a race night, the options.
Hang on, George, can you knit?
Well, yeah. I'm not saying what I do in my spare time. But individuals can make a difference.
Yeah.
So you're right to flag. It doesn't have to be corporates or businesses. If you feel you want to do something, just contact us and we've got a pack that gives you ideas. Because we do try and make it easier for people to think about, well, if you want to help, here's some ideas. So just reach out. We'd love a conversation.
Brilliant. And like George says, we have got a couple of challenges coming up as well soon. So watch this space of a couple of ideas that we're going to be doing probably by the sort of October mark, or maybe even September, that we're going to do it. There's a team who they know who they are, and if they're watching today, I'm making a beeline for them. We're going to get the arms and the legs in movement and going as well. And Ambika's just put something in the chat there as well. She's going, I'll join too if there's a sponsored walk. There we go. You got the kilt walk, Ambika. Sign up to the kilt walk and do it for the Glasgow Care Foundation for next year. And I think
we'll be in touch.
And also Elaine's jumped in as well, saying big thanks also to everyone who's supported us today. So thanks for jumping in there, Elaine, as well. Thank you very much for that. It just comes from me now, really, George, to say a massive thank you for joining me today, and really giving a an insight into the Glasgow Care Foundation, but also an insight on what you do and how we can help each other. I think it's really important. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Lee, for the opportunity.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. It really is. And thank you to everybody who's watched, listened, and also engaged in the chat area with us today. It just shows that you've jumped on and listened in. I would highly recommend, if you haven't done so already, is reach out to George, reach out to the Glasgow Care Foundation via their website, reach out to Elaine, reach out to Rebecca, start the conversations, because one of the big things that we talked about, me and George have talked about this today, is networking, is building the core foundations of great long-term business relationships, not just for the instantaneous right now, it's for the long-term and how we can support each other. I think it's so important. So please, if you can dedicate a bit of time, a conversation, a cup of coffee, I would highly recommend that you reach out to George and the team at the Glasgow Care Foundation and just start the conversation and actually see what they're doing. Get involved. Just meeting at their offices or come along to one of their events that they're doing as well. And also you can meet George at the RBC local Glasgow branch that meets at Hags Castle once a month. You get to hear from George and meet him for a cup of coffee and have a chat with him a little bit further. The next one's coming up in September. So keep your eyes open for that one. Please don't forget, everybody, as well, subscribe to the YouTube channel, because I've got many more Revitalise Meets interviews coming up very, very shortly over the month of August and September. And I'm also planning October with a wee break in between, just to give you a bit of a rest from me possibly as well. Stay tuned on LinkedIn Live, but don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned for many more of the business-focused podcast that is Revitalise Meets. From me and from George, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the week. And remember, as always, everybody, happy connecting. Take care.